again, just makes it much more likely that you're able to kind of nudge them over the edge and do what we want to do as an e-commerce brand, which is essentially sell, right?
Today, we're excited to be joined by Conrad Sanders, who is a master of copywriting and the CEO of The Creative Copywriter. So, Conrad, it is fantastic to have you with us on the podcast today. We're going to dive deep into both the art and science of copywriting for e-commerce. So, Conrad, let's kick things off and demystify what is actually copywriting for our audience today. So, in your own words, what is copywriting and why do you think it's so critical for e-commerce businesses in today's digital marketplace?
Great question to kick off with. Thanks for having me, first of all, and for that warm introduction. So copywriting, what is it? What's it all about? In my own words, I'd say that copywriting is as you said, the art and science of crafting the right words for your business in order to essentially compel, convince, and convert your target audience. And at The Creative Copywriter, our agency, we talk about doing so at every step of the customer journey. So it's not just about, that brand messaging on your website. It would be and it's not just about conversion. At some parts of the journey, it's about attracting and engaging with that kind of entertaining and or value-driven content at the top of the funnel. Then it's about nurturing. Then it's about convincing and converting. And then it's about maximizing customer lifetime value as well, which is huge. Why is it important? Well, you've got your target audience out there, right? And in order for them to part with their hard-earned cash, they're not just going to throw their cash around willy-nilly. In order to persuade them to buy your product, you need to, first of all, build trust. You need to remove barriers. So remove perceived barriers. You need to build up the perceived value of your products to a point that it's at least on par with the value of the money you're asking of them, if not more. And, you need to convince them that your product or products are the exact fit for their needs, that are exactly what they need to solve whatever pain point problem they have, or to kind of marry up with that desire that they have, as opposed to the plethora of other competitor products that are out there. So differentiation is a huge part of copy. So in order to do all of those things I mentioned, build trust, break down barriers, build up the perceived value, convince, convert, you need words, right? Essentially, you can't just do that with nice product photos and imagery, nice design, good UX on a website. Those things are all important, of course, naturally. They all need to sort of work in harmony together and work together. But arguably, and maybe I'm biased, arguably the most important thing to do all of it, achieve all of the goals, all the things I just mentioned, is the words, the way that you're talking about your value proposition and your products, the way that the words you're using and the tone that you're using to do so. So that's copywriting, and why is it important? And to sort of speak specifically to the e-commerce world, I'd say that, we were talking, even before COVID, we were talking about the death of the high street and the fact that more and more retail companies and brands were kind of having to focus on digital and sell more. Your target audience's attention is finite, and your budget is your marketing budget is finite, and in order to win market share and share a voice and convince enough prospects to buy your products in order to have a viable, scalable business, then copywriting is just, in my opinion, even more important perhaps than before, to differentiate you from the masses and do all of the things that I mentioned.
Well, it's a key touch point for how our business interacts with our customers. As you say, potentially the most important, as well as the user design, the actual words that people are reading is key for them to feel like they are having their pains met by that company and the products that they're purchasing. Now, to go into actually the practical, where we use copywriting for e-commerce, I guess the website is potentially the front line of an e-commerce business and the copywriting that we create. So specifically thinking about a website now and making sure that we're managing and talking to those pain points that you've discussed, what are some of the best practices for us to consider when writing the copy for our e-commerce websites?
Yeah, great question. There's so many things I could say, so many answers I could give, but let me delve into some of the main ones, let's say. And probably while we're talking about website copy here, because that's the question, a lot of these will probably apply to other touch points as well. But let's start with kind of perhaps the first lesson in the copywriting handbook, if there were such a thing, is focusing on benefits over features. We often say, in my opinion, it should be benefits married to features. You shouldn't just write about benefits. You should write about features. So those, specifications of your product, they're kind of important, but what does that mean? What does that specific feature mean in terms of, how is it going to improve the life of your target customer? So whenever you list out the features of the product that you're selling or products, just ask this question, why should they give a crap? Why is that important to them? And that why question is a really nice way to lead you to that end benefit. And that's really what's going to motivate people, that benefit. So we like to say, sell a good night's sleep, not the mattress, and other similar examples. So benefits over features, that's an important one. Choppy copy. So I might be alluding to, as I give you my answers today, James, I might be alluding to lenses. And as you know, we have a framework at my agency, the Creative Copywriter, called the 13 lenses. I won't have time to talk about all of them, but in case I start mentioning the word lens, that's the reason why. So we've got one lens called the goldfish lens, and it's all about essentially thinking about your prospects as though they have the attention span of a goldfish, because attention spans are dwindling, right? They're online, especially. People have 10, 20 tabs open at any one time, a million things on their to-do list, and their attention is kind of jumping about between various tasks and things and websites. So there are certain things that companies can do to make the copy digestible in the first place, and certain things you can do to do the opposite of that. So, chunky paragraphs, for example, are just hard for the eye to follow and read, right? So it can put a bit of strain on the eye, and that's a good reason for your target prospect just to go, screw it, I can't be bothered to read that copy. And you might have the best, amazing, benefit-led copy in there, but a big chunky paragraph should be broken down. That's a simple trick. Long sentences are also just harder to digest, so chop them in half. Put full stops in. A full stop is a copywriter's best friend. It's very easy to, when you have a long sentence, just to think about, okay, whacking a full stop in there to make it choppy, easier to digest. Another tip, again, which would be especially for your website, but really for pretty much all copy and at every touch point, is to make it conversational. So again, back to this copywriter's handbook, that would be right up there. We've got one of our lenses is the Real Talk lens, and that's all about conversational copy. And even if you look back at the old school copywriting newspaper ads of 100 years ago, the ones that did really well, they're extremely conversational. But by that, I mean, the way you write should be the way you speak. So a litmus test is, do you speak like that at home? Or do you speak like that down the pub? If not, it's probably not conversational enough. And just to be specific there, to give some specific tips as to how to make it more conversational, use the words you and your, right? Rather than talking in the third person. Ask questions. Questions are great. So you can often look at some copy that doesn't include any questions and go, oh, how can I turn that sentence into a question? Because it involves the reader, right? And the more the reader feels like they're sitting down and having a conversation with one person, the more likely they are to, be convinced and to convert, essentially.
I'll come in on that point there, Conrad, and the conversational one is an interesting one because it's not initially what I'd think. I think the benefits over features, choppy copy makes sense with the attention spans dwindling. The conversational one's interesting because I guess it implies that we don't want to become this like authority, and sometimes we've got this feeling of like we've got to speak up as like an authority, large brand, and not a conversational person to person. But is it all because the goal of it is to make that customer that's reading feel involved and spoken to?
Yeah, I mean, it's partly because as a brand, for me, a big part of branding, which is we obviously get heavily involved in as a copywriting agency, is personification, right? If you think about some of the things that you achieve when going through a brand strategy process, it's identifying your values, identifying your personality traits, identifying your voice, right? Those are all human qualities. And there's a reason for it because, a bit of a cliche here, people buy from people in the end of the day, and we are social creatures naturally. So if we're reading something and it feels like a conversation and it feels like a human in a sense, obviously a brand, but there's some kind of personality there. There's a voice, and that's why we talk about tone of voice. We as social creatures are just much more likely to be engaged, to kind of get hooked in the first place. Our brains are just wired that way. And then, as you said, like to feel like we're having a conversation in our mind. So it just creates a sense of closeness. It connects the two, the prospects, the reader and the brand in a way that, again, just makes it much more likely that you're able to kind of nudge them over the edge and do what we want to do as an e-commerce brand, which is essentially sell, right? Convert and sell and drive revenue and be successful and grow our business